Dear colleagues, Colonel Andriy Lysenko, spokesman for the National Security and Defense Council Information Center.
Andriy Lysenko, the National Security and Defense Council Information Center spokesman, with the latest update from ADO Zone. Proszę.
Доброго дня, шановні колеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. In Milan, the working lunch has ended with the participation of President of Ukraine Petro Poroshenko and President of Russia Vladimir Putin that took place within the framework of the 10th summit of the Forum Asia-Europe and lasted for almost 90 minutes. The negotiations were also attended and took part by Prime Minister of Italy Matteo Renzi, Premier of the UK David Cameron, the Chancellor of Germany Angela Merkel, the President of France François Hollande, and also heads of Euro Commission José Manuel Barroso and Herman Van Rompuy. The Prime Minister of Italy Matteo Renzi said that, according to the results of the summit, in a expanded format within the framework of the summit of ASEAN, an important step was made in the discussion about Ukraine. We met today in order to talk about the situation in Ukraine. The first step was taken in the discussion, although there's a lot of differences yet. Still, this is understood, but there is a desire to find a solution which gives a hope for search for the solution, he said. On the eve of yesterday, the President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, held meetings with the President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, Head of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso, the Federal Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, Prime Minister of Italy, Matteo Renzi, and President of Italy, Giorgio Napolitano. During the meetings, were the discussion about the importance of the full and timely implementation of Minsk agreements of the 5th and 19th of September, the necessity to augment the mission of OSCE to monitor the state of the Ukrainian-Russian border and improve its technical provision. Their sides marked the importance of the control over the Ukrainian-Russian border. Full ceasefire and release of all the hostages. Yesterday at 5:20 p.m., the reconnaissance detachment of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, numbering 8 people, detected by the ruined bridge not far from the Verkhnyotoretsky village of Yasenuvata district, a group of terrorists numbering around 20 people. Our intelligence unit had a combat clash with the enemy, and they have immediately liquidated 4 militants. Several of them were wounded, and they began to retreat. During the combat clash, our fighter was wounded as well, and as a result of the clash, the gang was almost completely liquidated. Unfortunately, the wounded Ukrainian soldier was killed by a bullet of the enemy sniper. And as a result, in general, over the last 24 hours, as a result of shellings and firings from terrorists and combat clashes, 3 Ukrainian military were killed and 10 were wounded. At the road checkpoint not far from the village of Smila in Luhansk region, the situation has stabilized. The enemy is repelled. Our positions are reinforced, and their defenders have got the reinforcements as well. Over the 24 hours, the block post was shelled 8 times. In Donetsk airport, the terrorists have 3 times shelled the positions of our troops from artillery, mortars, and tanks. Our military are controlling this object. Over the 70% of the personnel of terrorist unit that was formed of former policemen in order to storm the Donetsk airport have deserted. The shells were also in the vicinity of Piski, Maloorlivka, Debaltsevo, Troitsky, Nikishin, Novorlivka, Kamenka, Trudyvskaya, Krasnogorivka, Ostromogila in Donetsk region, and Donetsky, Frunze, Nizhny Sulta, Stanitsa, Luhansk and Luhansk region. Among those shells from the Grad batteries, Trochizbenka in Luhansk region, Komuna, Tonenka, Novokolinovo, Donetsk region were shelled. In general, comparing to yesterday, the activity of militants on the north and Donetsk direction has decreased a bit, but at the same time, the activity of militants in the south has grown. The terrorists are relocating their forces next to the village of Shirokino, and the delivery of supplies to these forces is done directly from the territory of Russia. Also, the use of Russian drones was detected in this vicinity. There were no combat clashes on the border that is controlled by Ukrainian, on the piece of the border that is controlled by Ukrainian military. The expeditions of Ukrbunprom have repaired 3 armored units. In the last years, the terrorists and Russian military have begun to take more of the destroyed armored vehicles to Russia in order to sell it as scrap metal. 16 out of 131 citizens of Russian Federation whose families have addressed the hotline of the Security Service of Ukraine in the search for their sons, brothers, or husbands have been returned to Russia. All the returned Russians are the military personnel of the armed forces of Russia. As we said before, 10 days ago, the Security Service of Ukraine opened a hotline for Russian citizens, the aim of which is to help find the missing in action Russians and also to identify the bodies of Russian military who died. The militants do not stop the shellings of residential blocks on the territories they temporarily control. Yesterday, they shelled from artillery the central part of the village of Granitne in Telmon region, district of Donetsk region. In Anthracite, the terrorists have banned the movement of private cars, and Russian Cossacks are actively snatching cars from people. The leadership of the terrorist organization DNR has banned the export and selling of coal beyond the borders of the zone they control. There are deepening contradictions about the redeployment of the spheres of influence and finances between the terrorists. The number of peaceful residents who are leaving Donetsk and neighboring cities is growing. In order to hamper this, the terrorists have ordered to put special stamps not only in the passports of the members of illegal armed formations, but also in the passports of peaceful residents of Donetsk. On one of the road checkpoints of the National Guards of Ukraine, not far from Debaltsevo, 2 citizens were detained. They had Kalashnikovs with 3 rounds of ammunition. One of them turned out to be a citizen of Russian Federation from the city of Omsk, and he also had the certificate of the fire dispatcher issued by the so-called People's Militia of Donbass. Another detained person was a citizens of Ukraine from the city of Makiyivka. They were handed over to Security Service of Ukraine. The pyrotechnical units of the State Service for Emergencies have detected and defused 320 units of ammunition, among them 121 artillery projectiles. They have checked the 4 hectares of territory, and starting from the 6th of July this year, 24,115 units of munition were defused. In general, the water space of 37.4 hectares was checked. As we said before, as a result of shellings by terrorists from the 15th of October, the work of the communication line B25 was damaged on the between Donetsk and Mariupol, as a result of which the trunk calls were impossible in the populated centers of Kurachovo, Volnovakha, and Velika Novosilka in the Donetsk region. At the moment, the damage is repaired. The Ukrainian Ministry for Foreign Affairs has filed their protest about illegal taking as foster children the kids who are citizens of Ukraine on the territory of Autonomous Republic of Crimea. The same at the moment in Crimea, under the aegis of the Russian public organization, they realized the program, the Train of Hope Crimea, the aim of which is fostering by the adopting children by citizens of Russian Federation of orphans and of orphans who are citizens of Ukraine and live on the territory of the Crimea. According to Article 21 of the Convention of UN about the rights of children, it is stipulated that the participating countries who recognize or allow the system of adoption of children provide that the adoption is made only after the permit of the competent body. According to the Article 283 of the Family Code of Ukraine, the adoption of by foreign citizens of children of citizens of Ukraine has to happen according to the permit of the central body of executive power. In Ukraine, such body is a Ministry of Social Policy. The document says that the Ukrainian side voices its decisive and categorical protest in connection with the actions that we spoke about, and the ministry called upon the Russian side to apply necessary measures to stop this.
What is the situation in Bakhmut? Have the military received any support? And what is the situation in Novoazovsk? Bakhmutka. In Bakhmutka, the checkpoint which is over there, according to the data that I received 15 minutes before this briefing, and that was the data from the headquarters of ATO. Today, everything was quiet there. There were no military clashes there. The night was quiet, and the information about encircling our military, about killing of big numbers of them is not true. And we recommend our journalists to really double-check such information, not to believe all this provocation of Russian mass media and social networks. Continuing this question, the information on Smila, that some equipment was crashed. Equipment was found there, but there were no bodies of people found. A day ago, our tank was shelled there near Smila, and 2 of our APCs were shelled. The tank was left there, And during that battle, the mechanic, the driver of the tank was killed. Now, Ukrainian military are controlling this region. Those who were attacking, they carried big losses. We do not give the numbers, but they have suffered big losses. And now they're just disseminating information that everything on the Ukrainian side was destroyed there. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, there were battles going on there, but now everything is under the control of Ukrainian military. All the positions are enforced, and we do not see any threat from there. As to Novazovsk, there's a group of equipment and personnel of the enemy there, but we see no attacks from them in the direction of Mariupol, and there were no clashes last 24 hours there. Yesterday, the Minister of the Interior, Avakov, mentioned the information about decision about Shakhtarsk. If the minister stated that that battalion was under the Ministry of Interior, there's information that near Mariupol some numbers of Russian military equipment came near Mariupol. There are Ukrainian armed forces, and there's no Russian military equipment there. No movement of any trucks is registered near Novazovsk, yes, but not near Mariupol. Any other questions?
For the Sunday Times. We've seen some activists, members from the far right, take justice into their own hands with that trash bucket challenge. Is the government doing anything to avoid such direct threats to officials?
Таке запитання не стосується АТО і не стосується військових дій.
This is the information not about military actions. Basically, this illustration through trash buckets could be happening only on the territory of the anti-terrorist operation that we monitor. If this happens in Lugansk or in Donetsk, we will inform about that.
Such while events take place in the territory of these regions, he will report back to you.
But what about, so there was one in Odessa. What is the government doing to protect officials from such direct?
Був такий інцидент в Одесі. Що робить уряд для того, щоб захистити державних службовців?
Одеса
Odessa is not in the zone of ATO, anti-terrorist operation. How many military were killed during the last 24 hours and how many were wounded? And you said that 16 Russians were returned to relatives. Do you mean the bodies of Russian military? During the last 24 hours, 3 military were killed, 10 were wounded, 16 Russian military were sent back to their relatives, and we are interested in them being live so that they can tell about what's happening here. They can tell that there are no horrors happening in Ukraine which are shown by Russian TV. 131 military of the Russian Federation were detained in the security service of Ukraine, and they send them back. There are some details you need to ask the security service of Ukraine. They have their own rules of exchange, and I cannot give you any more details. I can just tell that Russians who are detained on the territory of Ukraine As a rule, they are incriminated 3 articles for illegal crossing the Ukrainian-Russian state border, for illegal use of weapons and participation in terrorist organizations. If the guilt is proven, if they're guilty in killing our servicemen, then this will be a different article. The next press briefing